We're going live. Hold on. It's okay.
So what's happened to Bob?
He might have gone on his little vacation, because Darren brought up the point that, or maybe you, we didn't know where he was when we got the phone call. She invited him to the meeting, he says, oh, I can't make it, you have my proxy. Could have been in California.
So,
Well, if he doesn't show up Saturday, we'll make further. He might have joined Sarah, and then the Catholic joined us. Maybe they're better.
we should probably go.
I'm ready. Boguslavy. This couch doesn't allow you to get up. Yes, buddy, now shut up. Make your point. Right, now get out of here. Go ahead. Aaron, that's too loud, I hear it.
Yes, you can start.
It's 3 minutes, so you got, let him rest his vocal cords. It's gonna sing a solo video. Looks like somebody found flowers. See if it picks that up. Fixed temporarily. It's gonna put a bridge with 3 teeth. You don't have to have an implant, which is good. June 12th, 3-hour appointment. Good thing he has a bathroom. It's not painful, because everything's, let's see. Carol blew those?
She broke them.
Yeah, she did. Lenika. Oh, prayers.
69.
I'll distribute them outside now so people that can't get in. Have loudspeakers out there.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we shall begin with the prayer for the spreading of the teachings throughout the length and breadth of the West. By the force of the blessings of the non-fallacious three precious gems and of the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddhist teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living there together with their new ones, who have engaged in the teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dhamma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing moon. And especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness, may they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may this spontaneously happen just as we had hoped and wished. Now the Heart Sutra. Thus have I heard once. The Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of the Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a big gathering of great monks and great bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi, which examines the Dharma, called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, "How should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge?" And Avalokiteshvara answered, "Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Form is empty. Emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form. Form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Thus, all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There is no need none from ignorance to old age and death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering, should be known as truth, for there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed. Tadyata Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhiswaha. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, "Good, good, O son of noble family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you are taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice." When the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering with the world in humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. Now we shall generate bodhicitta. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, Until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on a full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So, we have been discussing Beyond Religion, Ethics for a Whole World by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Bring this over this way. Okay. And we have arrived at do you know where we are?
We're in South Orange.
Do you know where we are in the book?
We were at the end of the tour. No, we're not at 80 yet. We didn't do the love of a mother yet.
Okay. So, on page 47, we'll go to the inseparable relationship between mental and emotional states on the one hand and well-being and health on the other suggests to me that the very constitution of our bodies guides us towards positive emotions. As I often say, an appreciation for love and affection seems to be built into our very blood cells. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with pursuing one's own interests. On the contrary, to do so is a natural expression of our fundamental disposition to seek happiness and to shun suffering. In fact, it is because we care for our own needs that we have the natural capacity to appreciate others' kindness and love. So, we do have to, the pursuit of this state of concern for others doesn't mean that we don't pursue our own happiness. We're working at expanding the scope of our happiness to include and to appreciate providing happiness to others. This instinct for self-interest becomes negative only when we are excessively self-focused. When this happens, our vision narrows, undermining our ability to see things in their wider context. And within such a narrow perspective, even small problems can create tremendous frustration and seem unbearable. In such a state, should genuinely major challenges arise, the danger is that we will lose all hope, feel desperate and alone, and become consumed with self-pity. I think that we've all tasted a bit of that. What is important is that when pursuing our own self-interest, we should be wise selfish and not foolish selfish. Being foolish selfish means pursuing our own interest in a narrow, short-sighted way. Being wise selfish means taking a broader view and recognizing that our own long-term individual interest lies in the welfare of everyone. Being wise selfish means being compassionate. So the human capacity to care for others is not something trivial or something to be taken for granted. Rather, it is something we should cherish. Compassion is a marvel of human nature, a precious inner resource and the foundation of our well-being and the harmony of our society. If, therefore, we seek happiness for ourselves, we should practice compassion. And if we seek happiness for others, we should also practice compassion. Yes?
Yes, of course, very good. And he just started the parable with a wider perspective, and then he showed you what the wider perspective is. Results of a wider perspective.
So we have been mulling, and I just want to bring us back to the... Sorry?
We've been mulling.
Shantideva's whatever worldly joy there is arises from wishing for others' happiness. Whatever worldly suffering there is arises from wishing for your own happiness. What need is there to say more? Look at the difference between the two. Ordinary people act for their own welfare. The sages act for the welfare of others. So, taking that sort of essence of the spiritual path, which we've been sort of treating as our mantra or our koan, I feel that considering that as we try to apply what His Holiness is saying here is important. The whole idea of compassion being the source of our own happiness as well as the source of the happiness of others, our show of compassion being the source of all our happiness as well as the source of others' happiness, is cultivated as we recognize that whatever worldly joy there is arises from wishing for others' happiness, while whatever suffering there is arises from wishing our own. That it's a high bar, it's a strict standard to lead our lives by, but I think that if one were to look at a mark or a criterion that differentiates our potential from that of other beings, from other, non-humans, it's the ability to actually apply that, to think about it, to recognize its truth, and to actually work at cultivating it.
Recognizing its truth would make it easier for us to cultivate if you're convinced that, yeah. And that's where the meditation has to be done, I guess.
So how do you how do you recognize its truth?
You have to have a different worldview to start with, that everything is cause and effect and not sitting there inherently existing, and that we participate in the whole scene that's going on. That's something just anonymous.
Or you can experiment. You can try to make somebody else happy and see how you feel at the end of the day versus making yourself. You're trying to make yourself happy.
I think experimentation is a very good, but don't experiment in the other way by indulging in deep.
We already do that.
Yeah.
That's not hard. I find that very easy. I'm a master.
So in the teachings on exchanging self for others that I really feel that this is all the essence of. The way in which you really enable yourself to engage in this practice is by taking on the belief that others are an extension of ourselves, and that others, that we can actually, since phenomena exist by mere naming, we can consider others to be ourselves. We can actually take on the identity of others. We can assume that selfness in respect to others. The selfness that we have in respect to ourselves, which we identify with, which we really invest in, believing that we exist in some kind of independent, inherent way, if we really look, we won't find. And we are only identifying with ourselves in some, we are taking on the aggregates, the parts that make us up, and saying to ourselves, this is me. Given that that has no basis other than as a result of habit, we can work at developing the habit of considering this sense of me to encompass all others. All others. We can't say only the good guys. It has to be all others. But so how do you feel about that?
Well, we don't become all others, but we are concerned with all others the way we used to be concerned with ourselves. To a point, and it's as far advanced as we are. Yeah, but we don't really become them. That's really this.
Well, when you say we don't really become them, you're saying, and so what is the difference between the them and the us that
Others, yeah.
that makes our sense of self not include them?
Sense of self that we have is perverted. It's not real.
Yeah.
So it's more logical to consider others at a certain level, but not to think that you become, it's like the thing they say, when you become a Buddha, you don't just lose your identity. There's individual Buddhas, because they have different names, etc. To a point, I don't know that exactly, I don't know, but I know we don't become these other people. We understand their sufferings as we used to understand our own. And we try to remove it as we try to remove our own as best as we can.
But when you talk about we, you're talking about I, right? I mean you.
When you say us and them or I, yes, you're dividing a false divide on a certain level. There is individuality, but it's not deep the way we read it.
But
I've heard His Holiness say that doesn't mean we become the other person.
But if you have a sense of identity towards yourself, which is merely imputed upon your parts, you could have that sense of identity be imputed upon others.
You can, to a point, for their needs, etc. Yes, but you can't run around using his car and say, "No, I'm the king of France." Don't you know? Yeah. There's a, sometimes it's read to the extreme. That's why. In there's the Shantideva chapter where he says he is having a good time and I'm not. He's switching that dialogue that goes on in our heads all the time, where I'm the focus, and now he says the other person is the focus. He gets to eat good food. I have to do this. He gets to go to a new movie or whatever. That's the way to shift it. He's more or less showing us. I think. I don't know.
I believe one just casts away the ego and embraces the other person. I think it's a very natural thing to do.
Hard to do.
Casting away the ego is very difficult.
Yes, but so when I was younger, I used to do that. I used to just like run up to people, and I'm not saying that I did anything special, but I would just bond with them, and I could understand their problems, and my parents would be like, no, 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 stay away from, you know, that person, or don't help them out. They're not really people that we, you know, are interested in talking
Right.
to, or this and that. So from a very young age, I used to be able to do that. I used to be able to just, like you said, almost like becoming the other person, just kind of entering
Like, because
what
you
their
know,
needs are,
their
their
needs, right,
mind.
you associate, you would
Yes,
empathize with them, maybe that's the
Exactly.
right word.
but beyond that, it's like you actually almost become like them, because to really get the
You
other
love
person.
them, that's the word, you're supposed to love them.
No,
Yeah.
it's not a matter of loving, it's just a matter of like a very deep understanding, I would say.
One guy, I forget who it is, maybe it's his horns, but when your pity touches other people, that's empathy. When your love touches them, that's compassion. So that's, who
But
said
love
this?
is
Holiness,
also a
maybe.
label. Love is something that
Yeah,
you
it is.
expect
It's a
something in
good point.
return, maybe, I don't know, but it's like this,
Only women do that.
maybe unconditional love.
Women do that.
Unconditional love, unconditional love.
Yeah, the, what's the word they use, I forgot, great compassion, great love, yeah, the word great means a lot in other languages. I think, but who knows?
So, in respect to what you have just said, Tony, the phrase exchanging self and others and making oneself others and others self do not indicate a training in an attitude in which I am others or others' eyes, etc., are mine. They indicate a change in the orientation of the two states of mind of cherishing yourself and neglecting others, wherein you develop the attitude of cherishing others as you presently do yourself, and neglecting yourself as you presently do others.
Because I would exchange myself with someone who's a millionaire, I mean, you want to fool around, I'm joking. You know,
Well, when you say you neglect yourself, it's almost like you don't really do that, it's kind of like a byproduct. Like you don't pay attention to yourself really that much. You're so engrossed in the other person and helping the other person that you sort of forget about yourself. So,
we realize the context that we're in, we can't survive without others
right.
at all. We couldn't be born without it, on and on.
Mm-hmm.
So the ego forgets all that, it's in charge,
Right.
it's Mr. Trump.
Therefore, Shantideva's statement above, that you must exchange your own happiness for others' suffering, means to view cherishing yourself as the enemy, and then to stop emphasizing your own happiness. In addition, you must view cherishing others as a good quality. Stop neglecting others' sufferings and instead emphasize the removal of their suffering. In brief, the statement means that you remove others' sufferings while disregarding your own happiness. There are two obstacles to training in this attitude of exchanging self and others. This is Tsongkhapa in his great Lamrim. You make a categorical differentiation between people who are happy or suffering, yourself and others, making them as different as blue and yellow. Then you accomplish your happiness and remove your suffering because you think of them as mine, and you neglect others' happiness and suffering because you think of them as belonging to others. Therefore, the remedy for this is to make a categorical distinction between self and others as being essentially different. Rather, understanding that self and others are mutually dependent, such that when you are aware of self, you are aware of others, and when you are aware of others, you are aware of self. It is like being aware of near mountains. So so the correct way of going about
It's
this.
tricky.
Yeah. We must understand that self and others are mutually dependent, such that when we are aware of self, we are aware of other, and when we are aware of other, we are aware of self. It is like being aware of a near mountain. So this is
Yeah, it's the logic of how we name things.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it will only mean something if we have some feeling of emptiness, because it is only if we recognize that there is no inherent.
Long or short.
It is like being aware of near mountains and distant mountains, for example. Relative to you being here, you think of a mountain there in the distance as being a distant mountain. Yet when you go to this distant mountain, you think of it as a near mountain. So the awareness of self and other is not like the awareness of a color, for regardless of that color blue, of what color blue is related to, you are aware just of just blue and are not aware of some other color. So
That's very well put the way he says it. It makes it a little easier to understand what they're getting at. And the color thing is good. It's a picture in your mind, right? You can hold on to it. Because those of us whose minds.
What if you're colorblind?
Yeah, well, that's, I would say something like that.
you've been here too much.
Yeah.
So no, but now
Yeah.
this is something that we cannot develop by merely reading it. It's something that we have to deeply work at, because we to develop an awareness of others as being me is the antithesis of our instinctual attitude to self. And so we have to really work at recognizing that this concept of self is it's mere naming, this me sense. If I can really think of the parts that make me up, and if I can really identify the fact that there is this sense that this is me, that is not inherent, that is not instead of saying inherent, is not objectively so, is not independently so. There is no objective quality to this identification that we naturally have with our aggregates as being me. Hence, we can actually validly consider others to be me, and we can thereby begin to assume a certain what would you call it, feeling of concern, feeling of responsibility, the way we do towards our own set of aggregates. And I really, if we were to think about this over and over, we would slowly but steadily begin to be able to have our sense of self stretch over all other poor beings who are desperately holding on to their aggregates and identifying with them as me. And I think that if we really, we can do this intellectually, we can see that out of that sense of me, out of that sense of that identification with my set of aggregates as being me, and out of this wish to protect that sense of me and please it, I act in all these ways that are selfish, that are self-serving, and I develop this whole train of sort of negative karma that only deepens my sense of me, deepens the justification that I have in pleasing me and in protecting me from anything that might threaten my own happiness, and to the point of stealing, to the point of lying, to the point of actually even acting in unjust ways, all of which will cause me to suffer in the future. When and I can actually recognize that. I can see it if I sit and think.
That attitude.
And I can also see that if I were to extend the sense of me to others and care for others, I wouldn't be acting. I would stop acting in a selfish way. I would stop acting in a way of cheating. I would stop acting in with jealousy. I would stop. All of those things would have no validity with that frame of mind. And sitting on our meditation cushion and just thinking about it that way begins to crack the self-cherishing, instinctual way that we all lead our lives.
Very well said.
We alienate them, yeah,
It's very good,
self-alienating, that's what we are.
yes.
But the idea, we always keep saying we have to go over this, you do, because it's so instinctive to act out our own
Habits.
interests all the time,
Habits.
and you have to really sit and go over it. Slowly it creeps in the back door, they say.
But the sitting and going over it,
With idea, just hold it and.
but it's not something that we, when we sit to meditate, our mind is going to go
Oh,
all
yeah,
sorts of
course.
places. But if we sit reading
That's meditating, yeah.
and really take the points that Tsongkhapa puts before us, or that Shantideva puts before us, and really explore the logic that they are presenting, and think according to that logic, actually follow that logic, and for a moment taste the result of that line of reasoning. That's meditation. That's that, I think, is the way to go about it. It's Chungla Rinpoche used to read
Those
The Root of Wisdom, Ocean of Wisdom, Nagarjuna's Root of Wisdom, as it's called in Sawashiram. And he would read it over and over and over as it explores emptiness from different points of view, as it takes apart our natural way of viewing self, the aggregates, movement or actions, consciousness, all different aspects of phenomena of existence are analyzed by Nagarjuna, are demonstrated to be empty, to lack any true existence. And this is done by Nagarjuna's disassembly of the parts, disassembling of the steps in production, and to lead us to an awareness of the dependent nature of things, of phenomena, of actions, etc.
Because our habit pattern is to isolate little bits and something connects. And you read these books, you pick up their habit pattern of thinking at least a little, I'm like, but not much. But I see the point where he would And then he would always tell me, read a page, close it, see what you could see what you say in your own words what the author meant, then open again. You never say what the author meant. It takes a long time before you even get close, but it's a good technique for somebody whose mind scatters all the time. You know? Then close book, then close book, open book. You do this.
So, as Tony has said, Rinpoche's instructions were take a book, read it, consider what is written there, and put the book down and try to think through what has been said. Try to put it into your own words. Try to be able to express it. And you are thereby absorbing it. You are thereby actually engaging in analytical meditation. That's what analytical meditation is.
Thinking the first one, too scattered, and saying, well, my ego blocks everything. Well, this is the way behind the ego. So you get, there's so much in his simple talking that I wish I wrote everything down.
Well, you don't have to write it all down. We have to actually apply this.
That would be actually practice what you preach. How's that, huh? That's a tough one, too.
So, by becoming accustomed to the equality of self and others, the spirit of enlightenment becomes firm. Self and other are interdependent, like this side and the other side of a river. They are false. The other bank is not itself other in relation to someone else. It is this bank. Similarly, self does not exist in its own right. In relation to someone else, it is other. So this, it sounds like little logical trickery of some sort. We can recognize it to be correct, but it becomes the nut that you have to work at. You have to really slowly dissolve by means of meditation to the point where you can actually think of the equality of self and others. Thus, Shantideva indicates that self and others are merely posited in relation to a particular reference point and do not essentially exist.
Identity is reciprocal, or dependent. Dependent.
You must remove the obstacle of thinking, I will not make an effort to dispel other suffering, because other suffering does not harm me. It would be like not accumulating wealth in your youth out of fear of suffering in your old age, because you think that your suffering in old age does no harm to you in your youth.
The hand hurts. Why do you protect the hand? Something like that. That's the next example.
Or as stated in engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds, it would be like not alleviating the pain in your foot with your hand, because your foot is other. Old age and youth, or similarly former and future lives, are just illustrations. This principle applies also to morning and evening, former and latter days, and so forth. But old age and youth are one continuum, and the foot and the hand are one collection. Therefore, they are not the same as self and other.
He's a good arguer with himself when he has to be. I haven't even get to that point.
And the response is continuum, such as youth and old age, and collection, such as the parts that we identify as being me, are designated to many moments or to many parts, They do not have a self-sufficient essence. The self of yourself and the self of others must be posited to a collection and to a continuum. So self and others are not established by way of an essence that can be posited independently. So, and here again, this is something, we read in the Lamrim, we read in different texts on emptiness, but if we can really see that these are quite, if we can really identify this sense of self that we impute upon a series of moments of our existence. I think of me yesterday. I think of I make plans for my future. I identify the me that existed in the past and will exist in the future. Yes, I was younger, and yes, I'll be older, but it's me. This, if we really think about the way in which, given that we're talking about me over a period of time, and given that the me of yesterday no longer exists, the me of tomorrow doesn't exist either. And if we really look for the me of now, and we get to the momentary nature of our existence, we can never identify a me because it's already in the past the moment that we recognize it. And then if we think about the parts that make us up, there too, there can be no actual self, in truly independent self, if it depends on parts. If something depends on parts, then it can't be independent, of course. So let me see.
A question on what?
Yes.
Good. That's very good.
So we have two questions. The other is not findable among their parts. Same as our self. What do you mean by self and other? So we have a sense of self in respect to the parts that make us up.
Right.
But we go so far as to actually believe in there being a justifiable, validity in our holding on to our sense of self.
And that we add.
The justifiable validity comes from our belief in that inherent quality of self that we attribute to, that naturally, now, when we're working at this, we have to acknowledge that this identity as me that arises from my experiencing my aggregates is natural. It's something that we do naturally. In the same way that when my eye consciousness apprehends, when I see that table, I say, oh, there's a table. A quality of intrinsic or inherent or independent existence is, placed on, appears along with that table to my view of the table, my eye consciousness, my experience of that table. There is that, along with my sight of the table, is a quality of an independent table, as an intrinsically existent table. I have that towards me, towards the parts that make me up. And anything outside of that identity of me is other. Any person I see is other. So the other is not findable among their parts, same as our self. Well, the question is, the other is not findable among their parts, the same as the self is not findable in the way that I just described. That otherness is merely a point of view. It's dependent. The otherness is dependent on the other is dependent on the sense of me. So what do we mean by self and other? Self and other are merely terms that we impose upon the idea of something being other in a totally conventional way. Going to the sides of the river, this side of the river is, let's say, the same as the me sense of it's my side of the river, and that's the other side of the river, but it is only the other side of the river from my point of view. It is a dependent. It depends on my perception or on my placement on this side of the river. It is only other in respect to my being on this side of the river. So self and others is merely conventional and merely dependent. The ego is scared of negating. The ego is scared of neglecting oneself, but that is the way to destroy ego. The ego is scared of neglecting oneself, but that is the way to destroy ego. So the way to destroy ego is to neglect oneself, says this person. Take on suffering as much as you can possibly believe. Stand in the face of the superstition of yuckiness. So the ego is scared of neglecting oneself. True. Our sense of self-preservation, our sense of the degree to which we cling to ourself, gives us something that would be that would make us afraid of neglecting ourselves. True. However, so what this person is suggesting is that we must neglect ourselves in order to destroy ego. But what we're exploring now is not a neglecting of ourselves. It's really more of a positive process of recognizing or seeing that there is no inherent basis for my considering me to be me. I can identify with others and consider that, assume a feeling of responsibility towards others, and that sort of positive process is what's being taught, and it's not one of neglecting oneself. It's more, I think that the real emphasis is on identifying others as being a sort of greater sense of self that I have, given that the sense of self doesn't exist inherently. I apply it to others. Take on the suffering as much as you can possibly believe. stand in the face of the superstition of yuckiness. So, take a look at these.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about the natural sense of I that arises versus the more elaborate sense of I, if you will?
The natural, all right, so we have a natural sense of I, which we've had since beginningless time. And beginningless time is, not many eons. Beginningless time is, there is no beginning to this stream of consciousness, which we identify with as being me. And as this consciousness has physical attributes, we identify them as being me.
But what about during the in between lives? This consciousness, does one still recognize it as I?
I'm sure one does. I think that there's no point where we
Disconnect.
I mean, apparently at the point of death, as the sort of grosser aspects of what we cling to as I dissolve, there is a moment of perceiving, of experiencing something akin to a realization of a lack of self. But it's so terrifying when the basis, the basis for our identifying as me has gone. And out of that, the instinct of clinging, there's nothing there. That grasping is what propels us to the next, to our next state of being, in the bardo, in between lives. This is how I understand it.
It's a panic, and we panic and look for a body.
Is it almost like
I don't know.
when you dream of falling and you don't know where you're gonna land? Is it like that? I mean,
I don't know.
Probably, maybe more terrifying.
This is a question, maybe.
So, are there other questions, Darren?
Darren?
Yes,
Just leave.
we have one name, sorry.
No, other questions.
Oh,
He's pointed that was his voice not carrying it.
yeah, there's one more.
Where's the mention? You can just repeat it, not to write it out.
Can you read this?
Are there other questions, Darren? Is it possible to utilize the middle road as we see the interdependence between ourselves and others? So this way, as we identify ourself with others, we experience it in a limited way. So I'm not quite sure I understand. The middle road as we see the interdependence between ourselves. Very strange.
Who is that?
So to identify, I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry, Joseph. Show it to Tony.
Who's that? He's exchanging media. He said, Joseph.
Wait, don't you? Okay.
Is it possible to use the middle road as we see? Well, middle road of what?
As we see the interdependence
Between us. So this way we identify ourselves who doesn't be spirit in a limited way.
So we will discuss this together next
Yes, show up.
week in New York.
refreshments will be served.
So, continuum and collection are designated to many moments and to many parts. They do not have a self-sufficient essence. The self of yourself and the self of others must be posited to a collection and a continuum. So self and other are not established by way of an essence that can be posited independently. However, since beginningless time you have found your own suffering unbearable because you have been conditioned to self-cherishing. Therefore, if you become conditioned to cherishing others, you will give rise to an attitude of finding others' suffering unbearable. After you have eliminated the obstacles to exchanging self and other in this way, the actual way to meditate is as follows. Out of attachment to self, your self-cherishing attitude has produced all sorts of undesirable things throughout the beginningless time of cyclic existence up to now. Although you wanted to make things perfect for yourself, you emphasized your own welfare and engaged in improper methods. You have spent countless eons at this, but have not at all accomplished your own or others' aims.
That's true.
Not only have you not achieved these, you have been tormented only by suffering. If you had replaced concern for your own welfare with concern for others' welfare, you would certainly have already become a Buddha long ago and would have completely perfected and perfectly accomplished your own aims as well as those of others.
Good way of putting it.
As you did not do this, you have spent your time uselessly and laboriously. And therefore, make a firm determination by thinking, now I understand the faults of self-cherishing and the benefits of cherishing others. With great effort, relying on mindfulness and vigilance, I will discontinue the present self-cherishing, my greatest enemy, and I will not allow any potential self-cherishing to arise. In this way, frequently stop self-cherishing. And Shantideva, in his Engaging in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, says, self-cherishing has harmed me in all my myriad lifetimes in cyclic existence. You, O mind, though you spent countless eons wanting to accomplish your own welfare, through such great hardship you have accomplished only suffering. And also he says, if formerly you had acted for others' welfare, this condition, which lacks the perfect happiness of Buddhahood, could not possibly have occurred. Well, we shall stop here for the evening.
Very good.
Good to know.
Those extra quotes really flesh out.
It's very good.
One room you could never get tired of. Any names? We have any.
Okay. So we've been asked to say prayers for Parameshwari Dinsmore. So we will recite the Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I prostrate to the Omniscient One. Thus the Buddha, Bhagavat, Tathagata, Arhat, Samyat Sambuddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans is the Buddha Bhagavat. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. The holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted, it is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavat teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma, which is taught by the Bhagavat, is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the Sangha of the great Yana, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration with joint palms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are a field of glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata. Pure, the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms, this alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma, which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path of liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore, the fruitions are inconceivable. May they be born in a completely pure realm. I will recite the prayer for a swift return of Dr. Khensur Rinpoche by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Exalted wisdom of all victors gathered in a drop, sole refuge manifest in the form of one wearing saffron robes, Guru Lobsang Tuwang Toje Chan. Please bear witness here today that our prayers may be fulfilled. We beseech the great torch of doctrine, accomplishing from long ago the vast waves of aspirational prayers, Lord of speech and the victor of Losang's teachings, spreading them to the ends of the earth by means of explanation and practice. Though holding the commitment, I will invite all beings to be my guests in unsurpassed great awakening, yet you have withdrawn the activities of the form body that serves the welfare of others. Is that worthy of the supreme among the beings of the bodhisattvas? though impossible for you till cyclic existence end to abandon your commitment to liberate all beings, we beseech the new son of Nirmanakaya to swiftly return to the brought forth by Bodhicitta, drawn by 7 steeds. Having reached the far limits of scholarship, religious life, and goodness, please come swiftly as an unrivaled supreme emanation, full holder of the sage's teachings, and wish-fulfilling jewel. Return to the glory of Losang Tempe. Magnificent truth of the 3 precious jewels, Mahakala, Karmayama, Sri Matidevi, and the ocean of Dharma protectors. May you spontaneously fulfill our wishes, the swift blossoming of the reincarnation's fresh moon-like face. Good night.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you.
Very good class. Bravo. Bravo, bravo.
Translation.